Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to start with Pygame tutorials using object-oriented programming. So Pygame, as you may already know, is a graphics library in Python, which can be used to make 2D games and graphical user interface apps, and sometimes also 3D projects. So before starting the series, I will assume that you already know the basics of Python. So at least know the variables, loops, control statements, and functions before starting. If you know the basics of object-oriented programming, that's great. But if you don't, no problem, you'll learn a lot in this series. So as you can see in the video, I've already opened up VS Code and have opened up a new folder named tutorial. You can use any text editor you like, Sublime Text, VS Code, JetBrains. Now to install Pygame, you can get a new terminal and type in pip install Pygame. You already know pip, the package manager for Python, which you use to download libraries and modules. So when I run this, you can see requirement already satisfied, but for you it will download Pygame. Now, in any case, if you get an error here while installing Pygame, it's most probably due to a pip not being set up properly when you installed Python. So I will leave a link in the description. Go watch that video and fix your Python, fix your pip, and then get back to this tutorial. So once that's done, let's discuss what it is that we want to achieve in this series. What I'm going to teach is to make two, three simple games using Pygame and object-oriented programming. So let's say Pong, Tic-Tac-Toe, and a simple to-do list app. What I'm going to teach is how you can use different classes and objects and combine them to make games and GUI apps. So let's start. So in this video, we'll make our window and our main game class. So let's make the file main.py. And so first import pygame. Now I object-oriented programming. So OOP uses classes, and that does provide a more flexible way of structuring and writing our code because it binds the functions and the data types together in a class, and which I prefer more than functional programming. So let's start with writing our class, a class game. Now, what's a class in Python? So a class is a custom data structure, you can say, that has both functions and data types. And we create objects of classes, so there can be multiple objects of a class that behave in different ways when we change some of their parameters. So I'll explain more about this when we get deeper. So every class has one main function, which is called def init, and we give the keyword self. So we can pass more parameters here, but we don't need to do that right now. So now, uh, when we're creating a window, for the first thing we need is the width and the height. So let's say the width of our window is going to be 800 pixels, and then the height of our window is going to be 600 pixels. And then, okay, let's create the window actually. So I'm gonna call my window self.window. And you see I'm using self here, and I pass this keyword self. So whenever we create a class, it's mandatory that anytime we call a variable or write a variable, we have to include the self keyword here to let the interpreter, passage interpreter know that this variable is of this class. So if I use a variable of any other class in this class, I'll prefix that with the name of that class. So you'll know more about that later on. I'll show you. So for creating a window in Python, we use pygame.display.setMode. This is the inbuilt function of Pygame, which is used to create a window. And in a parameter, it takes a tuple of width and height. And let's give this a color. So self dot color equals to, now Pygame uses color in the RGB mode, where RGB is red, green, and blue, and the value varies from 0 to 255. So if the RGB is 000, that's black, and if it's 255, 255, 255, that's white. If you want to make the red color, you put 255, 0, and 0. 255 for red, 0 for blue, and 0 for blue. And the same for green and blue. So let's give the window a red color. suppose. And one more important thing that we'll do is make a self.clock variable, pygame.time.clock. So Pygame provides a clock and which is used to you can use to create counters and timers. But this has a very important use which I'll tell you in some few seconds. So once this is done, now let's create our main function. Now, in terms of the class, the main function is this. But in terms of our actual game, the main function is this because every game has a function that will run every frame and everything that we draw, everything that moves, and everything that basically updates its position or its value, which will happen in the main function because this function will run every frame and every second till our game is visible. And when we close this game, only then is this function closed. So we pass the self here. So also in this class, every function in this class is we also have to give the self keyword to this function. And now we say we'll create a while loop. Okay, I forgot one thing here. This is self dot running equals to true. So I created a boolean variable. So say while self dot running. So while true, basically I'm saying while true for event in pygame dot event dot get. So basically pygame.event.get is a dictionary of event. If you know basics of dictionary is a dictionary of an event which contains all the events that are in Pygame. Events are custom objects made by inbuilt in Pygame. So and then we say if I'm checking if the event that occurs if its type is pygame.quit, then self.running is false. So what it's saying for event in pygame.event.get, pygame.event.get is a dictionary of custom events already made in Pygame. And if the type of the event that occurs is pygame.quit, then self.running is false. So whenever we create a window, you will see a X button here on the top right of the window. So if we click the X button, the event that occurs is pygame.quit, which is saying that close the window. And so if you want to close the window, we just simply say that running is solved. And in the main function, the while loop, the under which and the entire game exists and is updating every frame while the while loop is destroyed. And so the game is destroyed and the window is destroyed. Now I'll say pygame dot display dot update. What this does is every frame it updates the screen. So without this, even if we add functionality for say for a character to move, it won't move because we aren't updating the screen. So in reality, its position has changed, but we will not see the change occurring in real time unless we add this line of code. And now I'll say self dot clock dot tick 60. So every game has a frame rate, FPS frame rate per second. You've all heard of that term. What this does is clocks the frame rate to 60 seconds. So our game is going to be played on different computers and different devices with different capabilities. Some have very high capabilities, some have very low capabilities. In order to ensure that the game and the way it appears and the way it functions remains uniform, we clock the frame rate to 60. So it means that frame rate will not go above 60 if this game is played in any device anywhere. And above this, we'll add self dot window dot fill and a self dot color. So what this means is we are assigning our color, our red color, to our window. And here we say if name equals to name game dot main function. So you are probably already know if name is equals to main, and if name is equals to main, I'm just calling the game dot main function. Another way of doing this is Another way of doing this is making an object of the game class. So I'm this let's say G. The G is equals to game. So I make an object G of the game class, and then I say G dot main function. So both of these are valid, but this is much more preferable if we add different files. If we add different files in our game with different classes and different objects. Let's cancel this, and let's run this. So yes, you can see the window which has a red color, and this cross when I click that, the window stops. Whereas now you can see that this window is not inherently resizable. So if you use tkinter, you know that windows there are resizable, and the uh, UI itself is very responsive. But that is not the case in Pygame, because this only provides us a bare bone library and some functions to occur. But the majority of the work we have to do ourselves. So if we want to make this resizable, we have to add extra lines of code, and to make the game responsive even, uh, it's too much of an hassle and too complex a thing to do right now in this stage. So I guess that's that for this video. I'll try to be regular, and in next video, if we're making Pong, we'll make the class of paddle, and we'll make the two paddle objects on both sides, and we'll add functionality. We'll add movements, and yeah. So well, let's see. Goodbye.